Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. Until I'm running out of breath, or tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I am your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. On Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. Through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present actionable lessons and advice for our listeners, no matter what career or avenue of artistry they pursue. This is episode 106, and this week's guest is hip-hop artist Evidence, member of the legendary West Coast hip-hop group Dilated Peoples. Evidence released his latest solo album, Whether or Not, earlier this year, an album that tackles many aspects of his personal life in great detail. During our conversation, we talked about his 20 plus years in hip-hop, the sound that has been prevalent with Evidence and Dilated Peoples, working with Alchemist, his latest album, how hip-hop has aged, his creative process, his current tour with Oddisee, and much, much more. And before we get to this episode, I definitely want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foulmouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And also, I definitely want to remind you how you can support the podcast. You can always go to freshasthepodcast.com and share any links that you see on the website and any of your social media platforms. You can also subscribe to Fresh is the Word everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I mean everywhere. Apple Podcast, Anchor, Stitcher Radio, Mixcloud, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Podbean, and Radio Public. If you can, on any of those platforms, especially Apple Podcasts, give a rating and review. And if I do see it, I'll definitely shout it out on the show. And if you want to follow along with the show while you listen, you can follow me online on Twitter and Instagram at KellyOmegaFresh and on Facebook at facebook.com/KFresh. And you can follow Fresh is the Word online on Twitter at FITW Podcast, on Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Fresh is the Podcast. So let's get on to the interview with Evidence of Dilated Peoples. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, ever since the early days that you were putting out records with Dilated Peoples, the ABB Records releases, and I've been, before this interview, I was just kind of refreshing my mind about everything, and it looks like the song "Worst Comes to Worst," like that tagline, is so true, because when I was looking at everything, these 20 plus years, like, you guys worked with like a lot of the same people, same features and everything. It's like a family. Looking back, what do you feel about how you and Dilated Peoples have been creatively over these past 20 plus years?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was a real statement. I guess it wasn't something we just made up on the spot. I guess that's how we were feeling, and I guess it proved to be true. Our first Dilated album, I guess it is coming up on 20 years soon, so that's crazy. 2020 or whatever. That would be crazy. Right. But yeah, just so much has happened since then. Solo stuff and production, and just it's like a different life almost when I made that song. Yeah. So I don't know. It's like they say every 10 years you shed so much skin, you like literally become a different person. That's kind of how I feel. Looking back on a lot of that, I don't even. I try not to go back and look at what I've done so much and reflect on it. I feel like there'll be a time for that, God willing, in the future. For me, it's really about what's next.
Do you feel like when you first started all of this, making records, that you found something special with your group and with what you were doing just solo? Because, it's, after all these years, you never really had to, change things up at all. You always had your sort of core fan base that stuck with you, and you never, went towards any sort of fads or trends. You just kept it real all these years. Did you feel like you just hit on something special from the beginning?
I don't know about keeping it real. I think if I was genuinely into like pop stuff and into different stuff, I probably would have gravitated towards that. It's just what got me into rap was stuff that wasn't as popular per se, and that's what I was like inspired by. So, or the blueprint that I followed. So, I think you get out what you put in, and I think it's no mistake I've ended up with a career instead of having a big hit record. I think that was something we always strive for. So you got to be careful what you ask for, because sometimes you might get it, and so yeah, with following, I don't want to say like the groups I followed were limited by any means, but they were going against the grain at a time when rap wasn't necessarily pop. And so, yeah, if you follow that blueprint, it makes sense that that's where you would end up, something along those lines. But the style of music is what I choose to make. It's because it's what I genuinely love. Like, I could fake it maybe and try something else, but that feels like work. So for me, to be able to go this long and not be burnt out is a testament that I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. So that's what comes first. If I can find like-minded people who like what I like, whether the numbers are big or small, that's the goal. Is just finding people who are dialed into the same frequency that I'm putting out.
Why do you feel like you've been able to have this career that is now spanning over 20 years?
Yeah, I think the answer before says it. It's just I'm not making music for fans or for a record label. I'm making it for me. And then if somebody else can feel that, then I'm lucky. But if I'm people make their first album, and it's usually the people's best album because they made it when they did not have a fan base. They just made it writing their lyrics in school, coming home on the bus, whatever, home on a weekend, instead of doing homework, writing rhymes. Those type of things are usually what leads to a great record, because you're not considering anybody else while you're making it. Then after your second and your third one, you've seen how that has affected crowds. You think about the girl in the front row or the kid, how he was jumping. And then when you're making your next thing, you go, maybe I should make something like that. And so I've just stayed away from that idea this whole time.
How do you sort of stay away from that temptation of having those outside influences and to write just for yourself?
Well, music is something you don't usually make with like a big crowd around you. You make it at the house, or you make it in the studio, but in the studio it's usually only a few people. So if you can just get tunnel vision good enough and just put the blinders on, I think that's the best advice. Some people write rhymes while they're on tour, and they end up making a shitty album because they're just writing about tour. You know what I mean? So it's a tour album. I don't know. For me, it's real separate, promoting and creating. So for me, I just like to create probably alone, or like with few people I trust, like Alchemist or very, very few select people, and those people, I feel like they have a good filter as well, and I trust them.
What is it about someone like the Alchemist and any of these other people that are in that small circle that makes it easy to create with them?
Not being judgmental, but at the same time, definitely not on some yes man shit. I couldn't, if I called Alchemist and told him right now, yo, tweet out for me, my next album is the shit, he would go, let me hear it. So, it's a real keep it real thing. And then plus, there are people like Al and, Dilated and Rakaa and Babu and just different people I'm around. They're not flukes. They're like legit talented at what they do. They've repeated and done it over and over again. So some people get lucky, but the people I feel I have around me are truly talented at what they do.
How important is it to have that sort of tight knit group around you, and how do you keep those yes men from being out of that that close knit circle?
I guess it could work both ways. You could have somebody who has hoping on your downfall, and they might tell you something. If you've got something dope, they might try to pretend like it's not. But then it could be the other way around. You could have people, when you're not making great shit, they could tell you, no, this is dope. They don't really, but they might not know any better. So it really is just understanding on who to let it go in one ear and out the other, and then who to let it stay with.
Your newest solo album, Whether or Not, what was sort of your mind state going into this album about what you wanted to do with it?
Just wanted it to be my last album with a weather-related title. So I made it Whether or Not, get or leave it, or meaning for better or for worse. And just be honest and I try to eliminate the distance between evidence and my real self and just be as transparent as possible without going completely emo and just being soft.
How do you sort of juggle your true self and your, in evidence, the creative artist person that we all see? How do you sort of juggle those two people, and where do you sort of draw the line?
If you just try to cut it out like you've been doing, it becomes easier and easier, and there's nothing to draw between. So when you're young, you want to live up to your moniker and kind of like a superhero you've presented yourself to the world as. But as you get older, I think that just becomes less rewarding. And so, it's just more important to just be you, for better or for worse.
True. A lot of times, people sort of think of hip hop or rap and everything as a young man's game, but there's more than enough people to say, yeah, there's this older, mature, sector of hip hop, because hip hop has aged so much, and there's a lot of great talent that's been around for a while that are still making music. And you just, mentioned about how when you were younger, you kind of protected that image that you were trying to, portray a little bit more. What's your thoughts about the way, hip hop has aged and how you have aged over these years as an artist?
Well, I would definitely agree that hip hop is a young person's sport. I wouldn't say it's limited to that. Just for the reason that things that limit an athlete usually are their bodily functions, not being able to keep up, right? Your knees are going bad, or you just can't run like you used to. With rap, I don't think, your tongue slows down. I don't think that. I think people don't necessarily fall off in rap so much. I just think life gets in the way sometimes, and that can cause a person to fall off, and then their youth energy gets drained from them because the world once again is getting in the way. A 9 to 5, major responsibilities, things like that, where they just take you out of that creative zone you used to be in that wasn't interrupted, and you get regular life start mixing in with your world, your creative world, and it can take a toll on people so creatively. But I don't think it's an age thing so much. I just think it's when your youth dries up, that's when it really starts to hurt. so what we're seeing now is some rappers who are getting older who can afford to keep that youth energy around because they don't have to subscribe to a 9 to 5 or go do anything. They can stay in their creative bubble and live that artistic life. And so you're seeing some people who are surviving through that and actually getting better. As a general statement, yeah, I think most rappers as you get older get worse. But like lately, we have been seeing some artists who are getting older as best work. So if I'm hanging out with people and we're talking about creativity, the age is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who are inspired and sit there and really get into what we're getting into and tune the world out. It just so happens that usually younger people who fit that description, but I don't think it's limited just to it.
Right. And how do you sort of, like, as, you know, responsibilities in life kind of start to mount up, how do you sort of swim through your creativity and then dealing with the responsibilities that come into life?
You try to figure it out. You try to see if you can juggle it. If you can, then you might make it work. If you can't, then it's going to show. It's going to show in your artistic, in your art side. Nothing you can do about that. You can't just show up to a drum machine or to a piece of paper like after a bunch of months of not doing it and expect that the first thing you write is just going to be great or the first beat you make is going to be great because you're you. There's maybe partial truth to that, but the best beats and the best things happen after you get in the groove and you make 5 and you race all of them and the 6th one becomes magic. You got to have the time and the will to like be doing your reps. You just can't walk up to the weight, the big bench that you used to and just lift it the first time if you're not constantly keeping your muscles up. So same thing with rap. So if you can find enough time in a schedule to kind of like divert through your responsibilities, maybe be a little adolescent and maybe neglect certain things, and usually your creative side is going to go up. But with that comes sacrifice. And so, yeah, it just gets harder and harder.
Yeah,
a lot of deadbeat fathers are great, getting older, but are great in their musicianship because their artistic side of it is not suffering, but other things are because of it. So you got to pick and choose. You know, for me, I want to be a great father, so I'm going to find out a way to do this, but it's not as easy as one might make it seem.
For anybody that's listening to this, whether they are making music or have any other sort of artistic avenue that they're in, how do you specifically sort of schedule time to work on your creative endeavors, you know, make music or write lyrics? You know, do you set aside any time for that, or do you just keep something close to you like a phone or a notebook around? What do you do to like stay creative?
Just got to want it. So you got to be willing, got to keep the channels open at all times, be willing for it to come to you. And that means, if you're walking your kid and you got your pad in your other pocket, and you got your phone on voice memo ready, things like that. You know, you're still doing your responsibilities, but you're not leaving your creative space. I think that's good for my kid to see that too, just to see somebody who's creative, not just all the way subscribed into just what the norms are. Those are.
Yeah, with this new album, you definitely have a lot of great guest appearances on this album, and like I said, you still work with a lot of people that you've worked with in the past. You know, what do you when it comes to the people that you want featured on your album, what are you looking for?
Usually looking for different textures that I can't provide. So if I rap one way, then I'm looking for somebody who can bring light to that track, and if it's a feature, and make it go up. Same thing with the beats.
Great. What? And currently, you're you're on tour with Oddisee. What should we expect from this tour? You know, and how did this tour come together with Oddisee?
Yeah, just a lot of full frontals. You know, definitely not wearing a shirt much. I don't think Oddisee's in minimal clothing as well. So yeah. Yeah, full band that we never met, It's just fucking we jam. It's like jazz. You never know what the fuck's gonna happen.
Okay, so there's gonna be a full band with it.
Yeah, full band. It's like eight players, 8-piece, and I barely met them, so it's just like it just goes off different every night. I didn't want to rehearse. I just wanted to pay for them to rehearse live.
Oh, okay, all right, that's fantastic. How did the idea for this come about?
Yeah. It just wanted to do something different. Just tired of doing the same thing every time. But I didn't promote it too much because I didn't know if it was going to be a disaster or great. Maybe next time around, start promoting it heavier.
Nice. If anybody listening to this podcast, it doesn't matter what sort of avenue of pop culture or art that they do, if there is something about your career, any like little nugget of knowledge that they could, take from what you've done over in your life and career and apply it to their life, what lesson would that be?
Yeah, don't keep it real. Have a shorter career and try to go for a super smash pop hit and get the money fast and get out. Do EDM.
Just
trap.
Get in and get out.
Get in and get out, man. Get a fucking hit. Go all the way to the top. Get laid in every country and then quit.
Then retire early.
Retire early. This long grind is not for suckers.
How do you go about, how do you go about staying somewhat healthy, mental health, when you're always grinding like that?
Eat good food. Avoid lectins in tomatoes, beans, and grains. Yeah. Stay away from those. Some plants don't want to be eaten, They can't get up and run away, so they form like these weird defense mechanisms and poison us.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's something that people don't really talk about.
No, they don't. How do you know that plant wants to be eaten? It can't talk to you. It can't say shit. It can't even sock you in the face. It's got to sit there and get ripped up.
What do you eat? What do you eat instead?
Just avoid those things, and then everything else is good. And then chilling out on the meat too. But I'm not here. I'm not a dietitian. Do what makes you feel good. Those things just make me feel better lately.
What's next for Evidence after this tour? You had a new album. What are you working on coming up in the future?
I have no clue. I have no fucking clue. I'm going to just completely wing it from here. This is as far as I could ever see. So I've ended where the book was supposed to end. I'm going to write a new book now. So who knows where that leads? But I have confidence I'll be good, whatever I end up doing.
Do you do that often, where you just kind of wing it and take it as it comes?
Yeah, you gotta just. Yeah, come on. There's nobody who's promising a career this long, so you gotta just freak it. Pay your taxes.
When the fact that you've been, making music, putting out records for over 20 years now, do you remember a time when something happened? It was maybe like a holy shit moment where you could be like, hey, this could be something I could be doing for a long time, for over 20 years. Did you have that moment?
Did I think I was going to be doing this for 20 years, you mean?
Yeah, or was there a moment where something happened and it was just like, hey, this could be something I could be doing for a long time because this thing happened?
No, it wasn't one thing. It really wasn't. It was just little indicators. There wasn't like a grand moment. I mean, getting a big check, that was nice.
Getting that big Capitol Records check?
There was a bunch of those. But I'm just into being creative, whatever. I just don't want to work a 9-to-5 right now. So if it's make beats, if it's produce others, if it's my shit, if it's shoot videos and films, whatever it is, just something creative is what I always wanted to be doing. So I'm living that.
If you, like, these days, if, like, in the future, if you weren't going to make music, is there anything else you'd want to do?
It's too late for porn. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, never know.
But what would you do if you couldn't make any music anymore for some reason?
I would have been doing it already.
Oh, okay. You would have already been doing it. All right, that's good.
Yeah.
What was the like you were saying that Whether or Not is the closing of the the weather themed albums. What was the idea behind that?
I just I made 4 records like that. Whether or not. I mean, Weatherman, Layover, Cats and Dogs, not Whether or Not. So yeah, I just don't want to make Jaws 5. I'm good. I want to make a new movie.
Okay, make a new movie. But you don't know what the next movie is going to be.
No, because I don't know what it is. It's not going to be a departure from what you're used to, in the sense like I'm just going to throw you off a loop creatively just to like be avant-garde. I'm not doing that. It's still going to be what I do. I just want to shape it, package it differently, and maybe loosen the parameters a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, I always like asking this question to end interviews. And that question is, who is somebody that's been a part of your life or career that I could realistically interview that would have some great stories or lessons to talk about?
Yeah, the Rakaa and Babu, my group.
Okay, yeah.
Alchemist.
Before we get out of here, if anybody wants to check out more information about you and new album, where can they go online?
Evidence everything. It was not easy to get. So yeah, Twitter, Instagram. Rhymesayers.com/evidence also.
All right, great. It's been good talking with you, man. And like I said, I've definitely been a fan of yours since the beginning, and it's been good talking with you. So that was my interview with Evidence, member of the hip-hop group Dilated Peoples. Go check out his newest album, Whether or Not. It's out everywhere. And check him out on tour with Oddisee. There's only a few days left. I'll be at the Detroit show this Thursday. Links to follow Evidence and to listen to the new album will be on the show notes for this podcast episode at freshthepodcast.com. So now on to the Fresh is the Word, Fresh Pick of the Week. This episode's pick is another release from the Rhymesayers camp, by the way of St. Paul, Minnesota-based MC Dem Atlas and his newest project, Bad Actress. The 15-song debut full-length album is produced entirely by Ant from Atmosphere, which is a culmination of all the personal objects that Dem Atlas, whose real name is Joshua Turner, dealt with growing up. It's a very emotional album, and you get a peek into the psyche of this talented MC on Bad Actress. And again, link to stream or purchase the album will be in the show notes for this episode at freshthepodcast.com. So, another episode's in the books. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.